I'm Carolyn.
And I'm Tyler. And we stumbled across the welcome stamp on Twitter one night. It happened to be great timing for us because our lease is up in Las Vegas in the States. And so we were working fully remote and decided to, in a week, put all our things in storage and take the trip.
Yeah, we've loved it ever since 2 years ago.
We only planned on 1 year, but we loved it so much that we renewed the welcome stamp, and that time is coming to an end, sadly, in the middle of August. But before we left, we really wanted to bring all our friends and family and show them Barbados. So we decided to get married, and we got, I think it was 80 plus people flew in for the wedding. The wedding was just over 100 because we made 20, 30 friends here in the last 2 years also. So yeah, it's been amazing.
If anyone's even thinking about doing the welcome stamp, I would say just do it. When we came here, we thought, if we hated it, we'd just go back after a few months, and 2 years later, we love it. Having the opportunity to bring our family and friends and just, see the island, see where we've called home the last 2 years has been
amazing.
So cool. I mean, the welcome stamp has been the biggest blessing for us. The last 2 years has been incredible. It's a beautiful place. We've done so much on the island, but the people here is really what kind of made it so special.
We're actually here at the Animal Flower Cave right now, and then we met some people on the first month of being here just on a paint and sip up here at the Animal Flower Cave, and they've become some of our best friends. They're going to come see us in the States. We're always going to come back and meet them in Barbados. So just the people really made it special for us.
I'm Carolyn.
And I'm Tyler. And we stumbled across the welcome stamp on Twitter one night. It happened to be great timing for us because our lease is up in Las Vegas in the States. And so we were working fully remote and decided to, in a week, put all our things in storage and take the trip.
Yeah, we've loved it ever since 2 years ago.
We only planned on 1 year, but we loved it so much that we renewed the welcome stamp. And that time is coming to an end, sadly, in the middle of August. But before we left, we really wanted to bring all our friends and family and show them Barbados. So we decided to get married, and we got, I think it was 80 plus people flew in for the wedding. The wedding was just over 100 because we made 20, 30 friends here in the last 2 years also. So yeah, it's been amazing.
If anyone's even thinking about doing the welcome stamp, I would say just do it. When we came here, we thought, if we hated it, we'd just go back after a few months, and 2 years later, we love it. Having the opportunity to bring our family and friends and just see the island, see where we've called home the last 2 years has been
amazing.
So cool. I mean, the welcome stamp has been the biggest blessing for us. The last 2 years has been incredible. It's a beautiful place. We've done so much on the island, but the people here is really what kind of made it so special.
We're actually here at the Animal Flower Cave right now, and we met some people on the first month of being here just on a paint and sip up here at the Animal Flower Cave, and they've become some of our best friends. They're going to come see us in the States. We're always going to come back and meet them in Barbados. So just the people really made it special for us.
Kristen, Asha, where are you? The best wedding planner on the planet. This entire week could not have been more amazing. She is incredible. We owe so much to you, Kristen. You and your team, everywhere we've gone this week, just been absolutely incredible. So thank you, thank you, thank you, all of you. Let's dance.
Daydreaming is fun, but the real-life Barbados experience is oh so much better. Run, dance, jump, skip, dive, hike, laugh, love, live your best life in Barbados. Discover a beautiful world where you can fall in love again and again. Barbados has a place for everyone, but especially for you. Book today and save now on your Barbados getaway.
There's more to these shores than meets the eye. Beyond its landmass and intellectual capacity, Barbados offers a maritime claim of 186,000 plus square kilometers across the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic Ocean. Barbados' exclusive economic zone is extensive. It represents an abundance of opportunities through yet to be explored natural resources. Combined with Barbados' industrial know-how, there's limitless potential for research and development that not only rejuvenates today, but heals tomorrow. Explore a new center for biotechnology in the region for the world. Bio Island, Barbados, where one can enjoy the business of science from paradise. From the properties of its indigenous aloe to the only cotton James Bond will wear, Barbados has developed a clever balance of natural and technical know-how in the area of life sciences. On the Bio Island, exploration of life sciences has taken root. Many young companies like Urban Farmers and Red Diamond Compost have successfully risen to the challenge of crop protection. But this ingenuity didn't just spring up. The Bio Island has a history of invention that includes harnessing wind energy for some 200 years and 150 years of experience in fermentology. Our scientific ingenuity continues to help shape new products and medical applications. Within the Bio Island may lay greater seeds for life science success. Already, the Barbados Fertility Clinic, with its dedicated team of local and regional physicians, has made the Bio Island a leading destination for fertility treatment, with a rate of success that far exceeds both the US and the UK. What else is attractive about the Bio Island? Favorable tax rates are just one in a mix of factors that have drawn companies like Lenstech to its shores. Others would be the high level of transparency in Barbados' corporate environment, the history of political and economic stability, the high level of adult literacy, and universal education.
And the reason we've been here for 25 years is that we believe Barbados is an ideal location for a company which is making high-value, small volume products. Transport links allow us to export to all countries around the world, so it's worked out perfectly for us. An ideal location for anywhere, such as medical device, pharmaceutical manufacturing.
Few places in the world can offer such a unique combination of potential, development, and geographical access. Begin enjoying the business of science from paradise. Barbados, the Bio Island.
afternoon, everyone. Our apologies, please, for being late. Thank you for being here on this Saturday afternoon. We will get started now. And first of all, please let us stand for the playing of the national anthem. Good afternoon to you once again. At this time, I'm going to ask Christine Charles to come and lead us in prayer.
Good afternoon. Can we bow our heads, please? Heavenly and gracious Father, we thank you, Lord. We thank you for blessing us with such a beautiful day. We thank you for the presence of everyone here in this auditorium this afternoon, especially our honored guest, our Prime Minister. Lord, we ask that you continue to watch over those that are en route and bless the conversations that will be had here this afternoon. Most importantly, Lord, we ask that you just keep covering over our beautiful country of Barbados and all surrounding countries. Lord, we ask that you send our Prime Minister back home safely and everyone here in this auditorium as well. Continue to uphold us and lift us and keep us humble as we move forward in these trying times. Lord, we just ask that you bless us all. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Christine. So welcome to all of you once again, Prime Minister, Honorable Mia Moore Motley. distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are here this afternoon to have a conversation with our Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley. There's a lot that I can say in terms of the introduction of our Prime Minister. I can fortunately go back to the days at Queen's College, Prime Minister, but I won't go so far back. In fact, I would simply reflect on what I heard recently, because we recently went to a consular reception, and the secretary to the consular corps indicated that he was introducing the Secretary of State, and he had asked for, that was Madeleine Albright, he had asked for a bio, and the bio simply said Secretary of State. And I say that only to tell you that I know that you are very aware and conscious of all of the very positive things being undertaken by our Prime Minister, speaking on behalf of small island developing states. And of course, this is a conversation. And without in any way delaying further this conversation this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to give her remarks the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley.
Thank you very much, Rudy. And first of all, let me say good afternoon to all of you, and how appreciative we are that we can have this conversation here in South Florida. I think, and I see the former Consul General in the audience, Ben, good to see you. The irony is that I would have hoped to have been here long ago. And the truth is that COVID took 2.5 years out of the 4 years that we've been in office out of play. But as they say, better late than never. And let's start the conversation, because we've been able to have similar conversations in the Northeast of the United States of America. We've had it in the West Coast, on the West Coast earlier this year. We've had it in Canada. We've had it in the United Kingdom. We've had it in the Caribbean, in other Caribbean countries. And now is the turn for me to have it in South Florida. The last time I spoke to Bajans in Florida, it was in Orlando, and it was from opposition. So that it is appropriate that I have an engagement with you here, and I trust that this will be one of many. This afternoon is a conversation that can reflect where we are, but we want to hear from you as much as you want to hear from us. And I've found that in these engagements, better to have literally a conversation than long speeches. But before I start, I want to say to you that many of you, I'm sure, have been back home in recent times, would have realized that obviously, while COVID was difficult and challenging, we've come out of it for the most part. Our economy would have suffered like all other tourism and travel dependent economies in a major way. You cannot lose 90% of the people who come to your island and it not have an impact, not just on your hotels or your restaurants, but on your farmers, on your truckers, on your wholesalers, on every aspect of life in the country, because directly or indirectly, 40% of all that we produce revolves around tourism. Having said that, we've been bouncing back, and I believe that, as has happened with other countries, that trajectory will continue, but we have had further challenges. As you know, we went back to the people in January of this year, and we felt that we were resetting then, only to find out that Mr. Putin had other plans for the rest of us in the world, and that those consequences of those plans would extend all over, even though the actual military battles are in Europe. Similarly, what has happened in the UK in recent times will have implication not just for global markets, but for all of us. And for countries like Barbados, whose dependence on UK tourism is about 40%, we will also have to be able to adjust and to be nimble in responding to what is happening on the ground in that marketplace. Last Saturday, I met with my own party conference, which is our highest conference decision-making body. And I also indicated a retweaking of our cabinet in order to be able to reset and to be more laser-like in what we need to do in these very difficult times. Those of you who know the term, some of you may know it, some of you may not, but we're in a polycrisis moment. And a polycrisis moment just simply means that we are likely to suffer more than just simply the individual total of the individual crises, the total, of the individual crises that we face because of the way in which those crises then interact with each other to create even a greater causal to suffering for many of our people. Having said that, I believe that our country is better placed than most to be able to recover and respond. But what is a summary message? That now is the time to build. The Bible tells us it's a time to build, it's a time to plant. We are going through a time in the history for our country and for many other countries in the world where we simply need to reset and to plant and to build again. And that means investing in our people. It means investing in aged infrastructure that needs to be modernized. It means investing in reconstructing our systems. Barbados had one of the oldest public services in the region that functioned. And as a result, many of the things that we do need to be repurposed or reconstructed, deconstruct and reconstruct. Our police force is the third oldest in the Commonwealth, formed in 1838. We had a psychiatric hospital back from the 19th century, but yet we never modernized mental health and mental wellness approaches. We have a strong educational system, but it was premised lastly on the 1940s British education reform. And even though we came in with EduTech 20 years ago and we started the deconstruction, we've never completed it. And therefore, how do we create that system as I wanted in 1995 to do when we issued the white paper on education reform, where each child matters? In other words, how does the system ensure that each child can be an exemplar in something? And I keep making the point, for a tourism country, the ability for people to smile and get on well with the people is money. And those who didn't realize it yet need to realize it, because that's what makes people come back over and over and over. So the range of skills, we believe that because in some instances a person puts on a tie and goes into an office, more often than not, they're not earning as much as skilled tradesmen, plumbers, tilers, joiners, etc. So we need to repurpose a lot of our people to be able to provide those trades, as well as the new ones that have come about, like coding, like working in robotics and cybersecurity, etc. Because the world is very much different. Like film, Marietta, I see you here. There are so many aspects of the film industry that Barbados can be engaging in a more purposeful way. And in addition, the traditional services that you see that we have done well in. And you go all through North America, and Barbados has a high percentage of people working in the medical profession, from nurses to lab techs to research people to doctors. All of these are people who have worked here for many, many decades. We've done well in the education sector up here. We need to broaden it now to include some non-traditional sectors. One of the reasons we were late is that we were looking at new processes just now for the manufacturing of houses. Because at the end of the day, we have committed as a nation to have a silent revolution in housing. Why? Because in many instances, Barbados' strength came from having a competitive public service. Over the years, that competitiveness has dropped for all kinds of reasons, but mostly in the last 10, 12 years, 15 years, where the ability to pay has been constrained by a weakened economy. The lost decade of 2008 to 2018, after the financial crisis of 2008, 2009, really hurt our nation. And it's not only in terms of young people not being able to leave school and find something in terms of jobs. 2013, when free education was taken away from them at Cave Hill, That led to a 40% decline in persons attending the University of the West Indies at Cave Hill. So all of these things have literally had an impact on us. But the reality is that if we can repurpose and we can and get back in there, we can also find ways to be able to bridge that gap by leapfrogging, in the same way that many developing countries globally use technology and use targeted training to be able to leapfrog. When you think about it, the introduction of digital payments in Africa and mobile payments made a huge, huge difference. And when the traditional North Atlantic banks wanted to extract themselves from countries like Kenya and other countries in West Africa, indigenous banks stepped up to the plate, and they also used the innovation in conjunction with the telecommunications companies to provide digital payments that transform the lives of ordinary people. We have just introduced a new digital ID because, regrettably, and you may have heard me when I gave evidence before Congress about six weeks ago, that our countries in the Caribbean have been suffering in the last 15 years in particular from a lack of correspondent banking, and as a result, the increased due diligence that has been imposed on us to survive has meant that the banks in the Caribbean literally carry you through the hornpipe in order to be able to open an account. When we were teenagers, you go and open an account easy, no questions, no problems, everybody, simple. Nowadays, we have the spectacle of people being unbanked or people not being able to easily open bank accounts. How do people function in a modern society without being able to have access to a system that allows them to borrow and also that allows them to pay their bills over a platform? And these are some of the things that we're fighting across the region, because if we can't have that, then it's going to constrain the rate of growth that we can have for our people. In other instances, our rate of growth is constrained by our failure to be able to modernize as quickly, and we're in the process of doing that now. A lot of the other systems, when we first came to office, you wanted a police certificate of character, you waited 6 weeks for it. If you had a job offer Monday morning, too bad for you. You know, if you were a director of a company, you had to leave where you were going and go and stand up and wait for a couple hours because you needed certificates of character to go into some joint venture or some new business activity. All of these things we have been deconstructing, and the digital ID will help us, for example, validate identity so that banks will be able to better relate to customers in terms of having the trust in them to be able to open the accounts and to work more seamlessly. These are some of the things that I'm raising with you because we are very much in a changing and evolving environment. We have an interesting concept before us because for at least 15 years I've been saying that we have to create global citizens with Bajan roots. And that means that Bajans will be global citizens, but don't forget who they are. And the truth is, it is difficult for us to shut off because more than twice our population visits us as long-stay visitors every year, and about 3 times our population visits us as cruise passengers. So people, and not to mention that eons more information is created on this platform that our people have access to and influence how our people believe in things and respond to life. So where does that leave us? We have to be able to root our people. We can't protect them fully from everything, but they will bend just like the trees bend when the high gale force winds come, but we need to make sure that they don't break and they don't snap. And that's why the continued engagement, whether through citizenship education or normal retraining or giving people back access to post-secondary training and education, and not just, as I said, academic. The government launched a construction gateway program earlier this year because we're satisfied that we will have a shortage of labor in construction over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, and therefore we need to prepare ourselves for it. we've also been trying, as I said, to engage them in new services. Then we have new sectors like renewable energy that will consume a lot of time, a lot of energy, because we have made a policy decision that every Barbadian-owned occupied house should have, as of right, access to renewable energy, whether, depending on size, whether 2.5, 5, or 10 kilowatts. It doesn't mean you can't go for more or for less, but if you want more, then you go through a different process. But what we've tried to do is to simplify the processes for those who want to be able to have what is typically suited to what their roof can carry because of the square footage, obviously, of the roof. The benefit of that is that, look, we are saying that the sun, the sea, and the wind don't belong to any of us. It's the patrimony of the country. And therefore, before we engage, as we must, because we don't have enough savings to do it all on our own, but before we engage and attract others, we needed to be able to carve out that which will be kept for Bajans, because you cannot seek to give foreign capital rates of return without enfranchising your own people and making sure that you've carved out a piece for your own people over the next few years to be able to participate and benefit. So there's a lot happening. I'm going to pause here because I know we only have just over 2 hours, and I really do want to hear from you and to say to you that hopefully this will be the first of many encounters, and that we can see how best you here in this country, which is the closest point to us, can work in a more seamless way. And I want to thank the new Consul General who has come up. He has a distinguished history in tourism and in working and bridging the gap. I know that we are in the middle of some interesting things now in discussions, in fact, with this very university where we're meeting at, to be able to link them at FIU with the Norma and Jean Holder Hospitality Institute. And one of the things that I'd like us to be able to do is to see how we can, one, ensure that in training our people in tourism, that we do so in a functional way that will also give them exposure to some functional language capacity so that they have access to wider markets beyond Barbados ultimately. And secondly, to be able to see how we can also look to expand the number of rooms that we've had working with at Palm Marine. Ironically, I would have been Minister of Education many years ago when that facility at Palm Marine Hotel was built, and when we had the Hospitality Institute moved down there for the first time. So I hope that over the course of time we can do more. Guyana did approach us, for example, for help being able to train over 6,000 hospitality workers with them, and the National Transformation Initiative, along with the Jean and Norma Holder Hospitality Institute, are helping. As you know, they are growing at a phenomenal and exponential rate that is the fastest in the world. And we've continued to work closely with them, as we do with all our Caribbean brothers and sisters, both within CARICOM and outside of CARICOM. So I think I've said enough, and I'm more than willing to hear you and to hear some of the concerns. I suspect that some of them will be different. I've been, as I said, in New York and LA. There's differences in terms of the types of things. There's some common themes, but there are also some very different themes. And let me hear South Florida. Thank you.
So thank you, Prime Minister. I'm just going to ask that persons who are asking questions first state your name so that we can have that for the record. And as you can see, the mics are located on either side of the stage. Please, thank you.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Motley, Consul General Grant. Welcome to South Florida. I'm Selwyn Carter, originally from St. George, born and worked once, grew up in Newberry. I believe you know my sister. You just met my mom, and I'm proud to be the grandson of James Sisnet, the oldest man to have lived in Barbados, and the second oldest man in the world, actually, when he died. I have two questions. One, we left Barbados 51 years ago, but we go back quite often. Can you speak about your vision for engaging expatriate Bajans first, second, third generations. There are a lot of Bajans who left home to pursue a better life overseas, but they haven't given up on their roots in Barbados.
Nor their accent.
Yeah. And
that's why I love you all. I love Rihanna too.
Yeah, you can't get rid of the accent even if you try. Okay. And many of them have access to resources. They own their retirement incomes, 401ks. They have children and grandchildren who are doing well, who are successful, and they see other foreigners who are not native to Barbados come into Barbados and invest. What is your vision for encouraging expatriate Bajans and their families to see Barbados from an economic investment perspective? That's my first question. Let me just ask the second question, then I'll let you go into it. My second question has to do with the fact that Barbados is a very small island, so it can't exist on its own in today's modern world. Can you speak about your vision for unity in the Caribbean and also the West African initiative that you're pursuing right now, where you see that going? As we know, Barbados is the most easterly located of all the Caribbean islands. It was very heavily involved in the Atlantic slave trade, but if you want to get to the Western Hemisphere from Africa, you got to go through Europe. Yet the ships used to come straight to Barbados. How do you see that in the future?
Thank you very much, Selwyn, and let me thank you for opening the button. It's always good when it comes from the center of the island, St. George. And yes, we are aware of your grandfather's ability to put us on the map for his longevity, and a lot of people in Barbados knew him and revered him. Let me say that one of the reasons why I believe in doing these sessions is exactly that, to be able to keep Barbadians in the diaspora aware of what we're doing, not just those who were born in Barbados, but those whose children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren may have been born here. And it is for the reason that we have traditionally sent out people. But the truth is that we've now learned that we are underpopulated and that Barbados has not replaced its population since 1980. And it's a huge problem. In fact, ECLAT reckons, and it's not just Barbados, it's a lot of the other countries in the region too, but we're the worst. ECLAT reckons that by 2050, estimates that by 2051 in every 2 Barbadians will be over the age of 65. Now that's untenable and potentially is a national security issue. And we therefore have to start the conversation first and foremost, we believe, with Bajans, Bajan grandchildren, Bajan children, Bajan great-grandchildren, because those of you who have your navel string buried in Barbados are more likely to be the first to say, I'm coming to help build. And it's going to be critical, not just in terms of absolute numbers, but also the skill set that we have, and being able to ensure that we can continue to be that place where persons can live comfortably, invest comfortably, and be able still to access the rest of the world. That's why I keep saying global citizens, Bajan roots. We also recognize, therefore, that if we're going to correct that, there is an immigration bill that's likely to go out early next year. You've heard me talk about it for some time. Why haven't we brought it? Well, COVID wasn't the kind of time that you could have a lot of these discussions that we're now beginning to have both home and abroad. I refer to it so that persons are aware that we do have an issue. In 1950, Barbados had more people than Bahamas and Belize. We had 200,000, they had about 80,000 each. Today, Bahamas and Belize both have about 400,000, and we're struggling to get to 300,000. So you begin to see the numbers for yourself. Put it in a different way, when I was Minister of Education, we had just over 4,000 kids doing 11 plus every year. Now you're struggling to get 3,200 when the year comes. So we know we have issues there. From a straight investment perspective, because not everybody wants to come back home necessarily to live 12 months a year. Some people may want to come for a few months. Some people may just be able to come for a few weeks. But they still may want to invest at home. And therefore, there are different types of investments, whether it is in tourism, whether it is in real estate. We're trying to see how we can use the concept for more crowd pooling and unit trusts, so that persons collectively can make a difference in terms of investments in different types of areas. Coming out of COVID, we also are adamant that we have to have the economic diversification that will not see us totally beholden in a public health crisis again, because the very nature of most public health crises is that you have to restrict movement. And therefore, if the world expects that in this century we're likely to have more pandemics, and particularly those that, like COVID, are based on some form of contagion in terms of mixing, then we need to make sure that Barbados has enough other services, be it international business services, be it manufacturing, be it renewable energy, be it the gas sector, because you hear us talking about climate, but the truth is that there's a disconnect between capacity and commitment globally, and you'll hear me speak to that more in 2 weeks' time when we go to deal with the climate conference, COP27. So what does that mean? That we have those of us who have gas, we'll have to look at see how best we can exploit natural gas as a clean energy bridge, and how we can scrub it and turn it into green or blue hydrogen as necessary, because these are the energy sources for the future. Even, and I've said it over and over, even the International Energy Agency by 2050 expects that 20% of the energy sources will still come from traditional fossil fuel, but most of us want gas as opposed to coal and heavy oil. So there's a whole range of activities that we're pursuing on multiple fronts now. And then the ability to deconstruct and reconstruct many of our systems, and to introduce services that may be popular up here in North Atlantic countries but have not yet been introduced within CARICOM, seeing Barbados as not just Barbados, but Barbados as a base within the Caribbean community, so that you can stretch from Jamaica in the north, Belize in the west, Suriname and Guyana in the south, Barbados in the east, because that's what a single market and single economy is. The only country that is outside of it, two countries that are outside of it, would be Haiti and Bahamas in terms of the single market and single economy, but there's still opportunities even in terms of doing business with them outside of the single market and single economy. With respect to the relationship with the Caribbean, and that's the good bridge in Africa, look, the Caribbean remains one of the smallest economic units in the world. And we have to be able to work together, first and foremost, through functional cooperation. CARICOM is a community of sovereign nations. We're all independent countries. But we recognize that each of us alone will always have it difficult. And therefore, like Europe, in the same way that Europe came together with the single market and the common market there, we have come together, obviously, as a microcosm in terms of size as to what Europe is. Having said that, we recognize that there are opportunities going forward. There's been no conversation on political unity in recent years, and that's largely because I think that all of us have been trying to focus on just simply staying alive in this polycrisis moment. But I do believe that at some point in the future, the conversation as to political unity will raise its head again. And countries will have to decide whether we are not stronger together at all levels, politically, economically, etc., or whether we should continue as a community of sovereign nations. And I say so as a leader of a political party where we already had a West Indies Federation, and our leader was the Prime Minister then of the West Indies Federation. So we know it's not easy, but I believe that the 21st century is going to throw up some more curveballs to us, and that the polycrisis moment is not over, and that the geopolitics that we're seeing in some instances is really just the beginning of many other things to come. Perhaps the most important thing is that we carry a spirit of resilience given our history, and I believe that that spirit of resilience will allow us to play some shots that others may not be prepared to play, because if you become consumed in the fact of the difficulty, then you can't apply energy to being able to overcome the difficulty as efficiently as you may otherwise do. One of the reasons why we have reached out, and we call it reclaiming our Atlantic destiny to Africa, and it's not just West Africa, it's the whole of Africa, is because we believe that the time has come for us to remove the middleman, the middle leg, and the scars of the middle passage. And that requires direct engagement. It requires also finding economic opportunities that otherwise are being undertaken for both Africa and the Caribbean by persons in the North Atlantic, when we could as easily be helping each other. And we should recall that CARICOM is in fact the 6th region of the African Union. It's just that we've never operationalized it and used it in an effective way. We've already seen benefits to our being able to have that bridge. In the middle of COVID, when we could get no vaccines, when we could get, when we had difficulty in getting therapeutics, when we had difficulty in getting ventilators, we joined, I was chair of CARICOM at the time, and we joined the Africa Medical Supplies Platform, which was a digital platform for common procurement, so that it meant that a country the size of St. Kitts, 38,000 people, could access therapeutics, vaccines, ventilators, etc., at the same price as a country the size of Nigeria, which is over 220 million people. Now, that only comes through having the relationships that allow us to work together. And what was significant is because those orders had to be anchored by guarantees from a financial institution, the Africa Exim Bank was that institution that provided that platform for the African countries and the CARICOM countries. As fate would have it, we have since signed a partnership agreement with the bank, and you will find that that bank and other commercial banks from Africa, in the same way that Republic Bank has gone into Ghana, that the establishment of the banking relations will be essentially that which will open up the other business opportunities, because businessmen tend to go with bankers whom they know, and that makes life, and bankers tend to lend money more easily, as we all know, to people that they know. So that I believe that we are seeing that unfold. In fact, Cabinet ratified the same partnership agreement with the African Exim Bank on Thursday, and we had at the end of August, early September, the first Africa-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum sponsored by the Africa Exim Bank and the government of Barbados, where almost 1,000 persons came in for that conference. This is the kind of activity that we expect will make a difference. And over the course of the next 2 weeks, after I go to Egypt for the climate crisis, and then to Rwanda, there will be an interesting announcement that we'll make in terms of other partnerships there. We're already working with the Rwandans on digitization with us in Barbados. So these things have already started to pay a dividend from the opening of our embassy in Accra, in Ghana, and in Nairobi, in Kenya. And just from a psychological perspective, let's get real. We become an independent country, we open a headquarters, we open an embassy where the UN is in New York. We open an office where the UN is in Geneva. We didn't open one in Vienna. But how do we open in the North Atlantic countries, and we don't open in Africa, where the United Nations Environmental Programme, which is managing the greatest crisis that the world is facing in terms of the climate crisis, in terms of biological diversity, in terms of those things that are required to save our planet. And we had no presence there for decades. In today's world, with this thing here, technology, you can do a lot more with a lot less. And Barbados has chosen to do that, because we recognize that we will only survive in this world by looking out, as we've always done, but we must look out now on our terms and not on the terms of other persons. Thank you. I haven't even gotten into the film and the telling of the stories and how many movies you know on the Middle Passage. And I don't mean Middle Passage from centuries ago, I mean today's Middle Passage too. So there are so many things that can still be done, because I'll end on this point. Look at how many Caribbean people, when we were colonies of Britain and France, went to Africa to teach. But when we became independent countries, all of a sudden the movement stopped. And that is why the airlift, most people don't know that it is quicker to get from Barbados to Dakar than it is to get from Barbados to London. It's about the same time from Barbados to Dakar to Barbados to Montreal. Barbados to Accra is just a little less than Barbados to London. But yet we still look both Africa and the Caribbean, instead of looking east and west.
That's why I stood up for a follow-up. I was going to ask you, do you envision any of the African airways, maybe South Africa or Ethiopia, the two strong ones, being able to engage in direct flights from maybe Accra to Barbados? I'm not sure where it will happen. I mean, I know that there has been some talk, for example, with Antigua starting an airline. I know that there is talk with us and other airlines, whether it is one of the African traditional airlines or the new ones, or one that is non-Caribbean or non-African but still does the routes between us. Still too early to tell. The airline industry, as you know, is in a particularly difficult moment now. Even the established legacy carriers, all of them are complaining that they don't have flight crew in a post-COVID environment, and therefore there are a lot of planes sitting down that aren't being able to move. I think many of us will recall when British Airways this summer canceled over 10,000 flights between London and Europe, UK and Europe, sorry, because of those problems. American Airlines has been having the same problem, etc. So we're trying to do it at perhaps the most difficult time, but hey, that's how we've always done things in the Caribbean with the environment that we have had. So I don't let that daunt us. I call myself a Jimmy Cliff girl, that you can get it if you really want, but you must try and try and try. You'll succeed at last. Who's next?
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Morgan Stevenson. I'm originally from Jamaica. I'm glad that you touched on the aspect of tourism, as that is one of the areas I'm passionate about. One of my worries is that not only Jamaica, but the wider Caribbean overall is not focusing on sustainable tourism practices. I think there needs to be more of an implementation there. My question to you is, what is Barbados doing to implement sustainable tourism practices, and how can someone like me or my generation overall work towards being a part of that change to implement that program? Not only in Barbados, not only in Jamaica, but the wider Caribbean overall. Thank you.
I think that two things have happened that make this inevitable, both the climate crisis and also the pandemic. And the reset button has really meant that when we rebuild, we need to rebuild in a way that is more sensitive to greening, more sensitive to the circular economy, more sensitive to sustainable development. And in a funny way, when we launched the Welcome Stamp, which is our 12-month digital stamp, it was a recognition that short-stay tourism was not the only type of tourism, and that we need to get the balance correct, because a long-stay tourist will live differently from a short-stay tourist who stays in a hotel. We recognized as well that in all of our building practices, we need to be sensitive also to the realities of the climate, and that we have a coastal economy. We recognize as well that we need to look at how best to create greater value added without just going after simply numbers per se. And that's why, as I said, the welcome stamp pays out, because a person who comes for 52 weeks is a 52-week tourist. A person who comes as a student, as we have with Ross University and others, effectively is a 39-week tourist, a 40-week tourist because of it. So some studies had been done as to the carrying capacity, and Rudy perhaps can speak to the details better than me in many instances. So I'd invite you after this meeting. The Consul General, he is located here, and he's a former head of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, and ironically a previous head of the Grenada Tourism Authority as well, so that they can give you the details as to the planning that has been done. But there is a sensitivity from the Town Planning Department, which I have responsibility for, with respect to that. And there is a sensitivity in terms of the metrics that we do for density, in terms of beach, and in terms of property and rooms and beds per acre, etc. So we're getting there. Are we probably where we need to be? Not quite, because the challenges are, as I said earlier, multiple, and are unfolding in a way that is not straightforward. We introduced a tax holiday for electric vehicles, but we can't get them. We're getting some, obviously, but the scale that we need, we can't get, because North America and Europe are not exporting in the same way, because you have a shortage of lithium batteries and a shortage of lithium. And with respect to also the photovoltaic panels, etc. So that's why I said that there is a disconnect between commitment and capacity, and we have to look at it and to see how best we can smooth it out as a global community and as regional blocks. Okay? But the lesson of COVID and the lesson of climate is unconstrained or unrestrained economic growth is not good for anybody. And I think we all know from an individual level that balance is the secret to life. I think Mr. Sisnett would have taught us that if he could speak now.
Good evening. My name is Frances Ford. I'm an associate professor of nursing at Miami-Dade College. And I think I have another colleague in the back, Dr. Heather Brathwaite. And my question is relating to nursing and healthcare. I'm kind of concerned of the fact that nurses are leaving Barbados, and I can understand why. I wasn't trained there. I was trained here in the U.S. But my concern is the whole nursing curriculum, and what is it that we can do here in the diaspora to help out the Barbadians at home or the nursing at home. I know I tried during COVID and I never got called. I did give my name in and I never got called. I submitted all the paperwork and everything, and I never got called to go and give the vaccines. I did everything. But I just want to know what it is that we can hear, because we do have quite a bit of Barbadian nurses here in South Florida. What can we do to assist at home? And there are a couple of us who are faculty. How can we, what can we do?
Absolutely.
What can we offer?
Well, let me thank you, and let me say I'm sorry, because I know a number of people were involved. I'm sorry that you particularly didn't receive a call, because we need it. Yeah. Not even mincing words. The reality of us having the Cuban nurses is what helped us get through COVID, and also the Ghanaian nurses, because obviously the pressure on Barbadian nurses would have been tremendous. We were already short-staffed before the COVID pandemic came. We had a problem for sure with persons coming out of the community college and passing the exams there, I think, as you know. And God bless Minister Bostic was able to unravel it in the first year or two when we were in office, when we came to office, and recognize that they were really teaching to one curriculum but testing to another. And I mean, it sounds basic, but regrettably it was happening for years, perhaps even more than a decade, but I speak subject to correction. What I'd like to do for you, Minister Walcott, as you know, was Minister of Foreign Affairs up until earlier this week. And he, more than any, because of his background and his work also in helping to establish the Caribbean Public Health Agency and transitioning the QEH to a board, is in a perfect position for us to be able to get the whole question of nursing education correct. We have the UWI, we have the Barbados Community College, and we've also been in talks, but those were delayed somewhat because of the pandemic. The sister institution to Ross University is an entity called Chamberlain, I think that you may be aware of, that does nursing care and education. There is no doubt in my mind that we have to significantly expand the numbers of persons who are trained in nursing in our country. And you know, I used to say up until 3 years ago that there's some professions, and I think people now begin to understand fully what I meant because of what we've gone through. There are some professions where we need to be able to get to the top of the class again. Now, don't get me wrong, the ability of this country to outpay us will always be there. The ability of the UK and Europe to outpay us will always be there. But we also are aware that people don't only make judgments on the basis of money. People make judgments on the basis of family. People make judgments on the basis of quality of life. And if you're like me, I ain't living in no country in the winter. So those who want to spread rumors about me know that your first obstacle is that you got to get me to live in the winter, and I ain't going there. So, but you understand what I'm saying. So people make decisions for all kinds of reasons. And in addition to that, people can also work in different ways in this new modern economy. Somebody can choose to work 6 months in a locum in North America and 6 months in a locum back at home. So what I've been trying to do is to get people to change their mindset and to understand that how we deploy people does not have to be the same way in which we deployed them 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And that young people in particular, the first thing I learned with the youngsters when coming out of education and youth affairs was the word portability. I said, what do you mean? So the fellas tell me, if you can't wear it, can't carry it, can't move it, don't want it. And that's effectively the gig economy. So how do we adjust, particularly within the public service and particularly in areas like nursing, policing, and teaching, which are on the front line of a potential Caribbean exodus? We're talking about Barbados, but I see in Jamaica, Jamaica's had real problems this year with educators leaving. We've lost a few, but nowhere near as many as Jamaica has lost in terms of educators and nurses, etc. So it's a serious discussion we have to have. Cuba has benefited from educating a surplus of medical professionals, from nurses, lab technicians, lab researchers to doctors. And we, I am sure, will just have to do the same. And we must see ourselves as a surplus educator, recognizing that we will continue to lose people every year. Now, if you can come and help with in situ training as well, because my own view is that in the same way that we can open our minds up to how people work, we need to open our minds up to how we train. And that we need to do a lot more in situ training in position. Because at the end of the day, what is training trying to do? It's trying to give you concepts and skills that you might not otherwise have had, or if you had them, that you were not using in a strategic way. And secondly, it's trying to change habit. If you're going to transform, you have to change habit. And more often than not, that means practice. That's why you hear law practice, medical practice, nursing practice. You understand? Because they recognize that you got to do it over and over and over. My own view is, and I'm asking us to move that way with respect to police, we need to be able to train our police, especially those in supervision, from sergeant to senior superintendent, in situ. You will always get a few who are taken out and sent for high command training, but the majority don't receive that. Similarly with the nurses, we need to look at our nurses in the hospital, in the geriatric hospital, the psychiatric hospital, etc. And one of the things and opportunities I got during COVID was to be able to talk to a lot more healthcare professionals directly. And we're trying to see how best we can have community-based programs, how best we can elevate the the training. We have specialist nurses, which didn't exist before, because they have a fundamental problem with taking people out of their area of expertise and putting them in management, and you lose the area of expertise, and they're not trained as managers either. So it's a double whammy. It's the same thing that happens in journalism. You take your best journalists, and all of a sudden, for them to get paid properly, you put them as a manager. So I'd like to take your information, have Rudy take your information, and put you in contact with the new Minister of Health, who is not new to health, but he's new to the office from this week again, and to see how best we can work with some of you, particularly those of you who are nursing educators, to be able to see how best we can upgrade our in-situ training. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure, Prime Minister, that one of our officers states the information. You use Jamaica as an example just now, and I see at the podium my good Jamaican friend. Over to you.
Thank you, Consul General. Prime Minister, my name is Marlon Hill. Like the Consul General said, I am Jamaican descent, but I'm thankful to Barbados. Part of my legal studies here in the U.S. was at Cave Hill, courtesy of my law professor at Florida State University, the late Elwyn Griffith, who was also from Barbados. So I have two quick comments and a very specific question. First and foremost, let me just say that you are knocking it out the park. Cricket stadium, baseball stadium, whatever you call it, you're knocking it out. And you're really setting the bar, and we appreciate your leadership in many different ways, I can say. Second, quick comment, thank you for bringing this conversation to an academic institution like FIU. The students are here, and I'm sure they appreciate this conversation and your leadership. My very first, very specific question is, we have an election here, as you may know, in about a week and a half, and many people, all the U.S. citizens, raise your hand. U.S. citizens, raise your hand. Okay, maybe 60%. For the things that you can't say, or the ambassador can't say, or the consul general can't say, when they speak to their congressperson or their U.S. senator, whoever that may be, the 2 U.S. senators, or if they maybe visit the White House, specifically, what do you need us to say on behalf of Barbados, the broader Caribbean region, that you can't say?
Thank you. How long you got? you know, at home I've taken to using some sayings to be able to let the penny drop, and sayings that we know from growing up. And I make the point, many hands make light work. And I thank you for that, because much of what the Caribbean needs in terms of its repositioning of its relationships with the North Atlantic countries in particular relates to having space, fiscal space, policy space, as well as opportunities for our people. Opportunities for investment, opportunities for employment, opportunities for training, etc. And much of us in the region felt for some time that since Ronald Reagan in 1980, post-80 with the Caribbean Basin Initiative, not much emphasis was placed on the region again going forward from a policy perspective. That is why I want to thank Congresswoman Maxine Waters for allowing us coming to Barbados with 4 or 5 other congresswomen and congressmen earlier this year. And then the follow-up was the hearings on the correspondent banking, so that we could share our perspective. Because in many instances, we found that it's not even necessarily malice, but it's simply people don't appreciate or are not sensitive to our reality, because we are so small that they've not taken the time to be able to be sensitized. And that's why your comment as to persons continuing the conversation in our absence with your congresspeople, at your local level, at your state level, at your federal level is so important. Whether it is through those of you born in the Caribbean or through your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, business colleagues, partners, church, people, whatever. We are facing one of the most difficult moments in the world with the climate crisis. And one of the reasons why the Caribbean remains highly indebted, and you may hear me talk a lot about the economy, it's not because I don't see people, because I try to put people and see, feel, and hear people in everything that we do. But we also know that it takes cash to care. And we also know that if I've got to go and spend, as is happening now in Barbados, 1.5% of GDP, 150 million roughly, on being able to recover from Hurricane Elsa and the freak storm, and the ashfall, another 80 million, then that's money that would otherwise have gone in to other things. And where are we spending it? We're spending it because the G20 countries of the world are responsible for 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. And whether we like it or not, those countries that are responsible for it, and there's a difference between stock and flow, and I'm going to break it down, because the stock of greenhouse gases has literally come from the Industrial Revolution. Now, who built the Industrial Revolution? It's the blood, sweat, and tears of us and our brothers and sisters across the world, as developing countries as we are today, who were ex-colonies, that literally financed the Industrial Revolution. It is a crying shame that we are now facing double jeopardy, where that which we built is now also the cause of that which may cause some of us to lose our homes, or in some instances to lose some of our islands, depending on where you are in the Pacific or the Caribbean. Hence, the conversation for how we treat fairly and equitably two small island developing states, landlocked countries, developing countries between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn is now a strong and valid conversation. And that's why you hear us talking about it over and over. By the same token, you can't have everything being left out for our people in financing our way to net zero. The world came to us and said in 2016 with the Paris Agreement, oh, we'll put $100 billion together for all of you all for adaptation, because you will have to adapt to living in a new environment. Well, years later, everybody's still waiting for that. And 100 million today is a lot less than 100 billion was 7 years ago. So that pressure on that front has to continue. Secondly, we've been fighting the battle, and I'm sure the CG will bring it around. We've launched something called the Bridgetown Initiative, working with NGOs, working with other like-minded governments, that simply says, look, we need long-term development capital. You can't finance development with 7-year money. Most of you in here can't build a house with 7-year money. If I ask you to go and get a mortgage and you get a 7-year mortgage, you can't afford it. But all of a sudden, if you had a 25-year mortgage, or a 20-year mortgage, or a 30-year mortgage, becomes a different story. And I use that just as an example, but you can't develop our countries in the way in which they want us to do, and we need space to do it. It's the same way when the WTO was formed, we said we need special and differential treatment for our farmers, for our manufacturers, because at the end of the day, we don't have any capacity to distort global trade in goods, because our share of global trade in goods is 0.000%. And our share in global trade in services is 0.0001%. So our capacity to distort is not there. But we don't listen to us. Nobody lobbied. Nobody think for us. What is the reality? 30 years on, Barbados' agricultural sector declined by 22%, and Barbados' manufacturing sector declined by 34%, simply because we never got the world to recognize that we needed special and differential treatment. What has COVID and climate done shown us? That food security matters. If Hurricane Ian had taken out Miami instead of Western Florida, what would be happening to food supply all through the Caribbean chain now? Most Caribbean countries depend on a weekly ship bringing food. And that's why President Ali has been doing an excellent job in leading the effort of being able to do what we asked him to do to help us reduce our import bill by 2025, at least by 25%, but more now, given what we've seen with the pandemic. So we need to be able to have that policy space, because bet your dollar, this country supports its farmers in the Midwest, Europe supports its farmers, but we in the Caribbean don't get to support our farmers because we've been told that the WTO doesn't allow this or that or this or that or whatever. And that's one of the reasons why Barbados took up the presidency of UNCTAD and became the smallest country in the world to host an UNCTAD conference last year. Because UNCTAD is supposed to be the organization for trade and development for developing countries. And if we can't get the policy space that a man that growing vegetables in St. George or St. Thomas is not only going to grow when there's a hurricane and there's a shortage of food coming in from outside, in order for him to have the capacity to supply food to us, he has to grow all year round, not true? If not, he doesn't have the systems, the working capital, or anything. So these are some of the things and the policy battles that we're fighting. And then from a labor perspective, I see Jackie here. Where's Jackie? So Jackie gone? Right. Who is working to be able to expand opportunities for us in terms of our workers, and Jamaica benefits, a lot of other countries benefit. At this time of adjustment for our countries coming out of the deep hole of COVID, and at the very time that the United States of America has a shortage of labor, who are the most natural people to supply that labor force, and who probably will not stay here but go back home? It's Caribbean people. One of the reasons why cost of living prices are being driven through the roof in this country is not just the cost of fuel, it's also the cost of labor. And the cost of labor has increased significantly because of the inability to find people to do the jobs. Once again, because of COVID, the numbers that died, the numbers who no longer want to work in that kind of environment, and who just changed their perspective on life. So if we can have here in Florida, take Florida for once, and say to Florida, look, get on top of our labor costs. Instead of bussing out people, find a way to have a structured immigration program where people can sell their services and come in and come back out. And these are the things that will help ease the pressure on many of our countries at home, where the level and rate of economic recovery in a post-COVID situation has not been as swift as it could be. And let me give you the other reason why. Your dollar, US dollar, has strengthened appreciably. Now, it doesn't affect Barbados in this way as much because, mercifully, we finished our debt restructuring the month before COVID came. I say, thank God, amen, thank God. But there are 50-something countries globally, of which some Caribbean countries are among them, whose cost of servicing their debt has gone up appreciably, both because of the quantitative tightening by the Fed and other global central banks across the world, but also because of the fact that in addition to the tightening, which has led to increase in interest rates, the reality is that they are not in a position to earn as they were earning before, because they're still not out of the COVID trough. So you have reduced economic activity and increased interest rates. What does that combine to do? Problems. And our fear is, how do we stop this debt crisis from morphing into a financial crisis as happened in the late 1920s? And we should know enough to be able to avoid it, because if that happens, that's when companies and households start to feel the real pain. So bottom line is, help us to ease some pressure at the individual level by creating more opportunities for training and for jobs just in the individual states, not even at the federal level, because the one thing I've learned about up here, anything federal takes forever and monolithic. But we can do a lot more at the city win. Secondly, at the federal level then is where we attack the policy issues which I started talking about first. So policy and people. Help us carry the messages. Thank you.
So you see a couple persons coming to
Hi, good evening.
podium.
Welcome. My name is Dr. Heather Bradford. As Dr. Ford introduced me, I'm the other Bajan who's the professor at Miami-Dade College. But I'm also a professor here at Florida International University, Nico Wertheim's College of Nursing and Health Science since 1996. I'm an old head. But I want to speak on philanthropy and the blocks that we find when we try to help and give back to Barbados as nurses or even as teachers. I found that I wasn't able to, get through the blocks. And because of that, it's funny, I took my efforts to Ghana, West Africa. And I worked with the University of Cape Coast, the University of Accra, and there's a school called the Pangtang School of Nursing there that is a lab named after me because of FIU's efforts to give. We take our old equipment from here and I ship it to Ghana. And at the Pangtang School of Nursing, it helps them. We now have libraries, and all of that is done on individual monies. So we wanted to know, we want to get back to Barbados. Most of you might not know, there's a lady by the name of Jackie. She's in Fort Lauderdale. Dr. Sylvester Brathwaite, no relation. He has what's called the small libraries, little libraries. We went down to Barbados in, I think it was May of this year. And we wanted to put these little libraries in our primary schools. So, well, now you know, my niece is the Chief Education Officer, Dr. Ramona Bradshaw.
She's doing a great job.
Yes, she is. Mona rocks. And basically, we have little libraries now at Deacon's Primary. My garage is about full with books to send to Barbados. We want to put these little libraries in all of the schools. And basically what it is for children to come and take out reading books, read them. And that is the effort of my sister, who is a teacher here in Pembroke Pines. She and her children gather these books every school year when the books are being thrown in the dumpster, people. They throw them in the dumpster. And I contact the Pembroke Pines City and say, listen, bring them to me. They bring them in the truck. And I can't get my vehicles in my garage. But how do I get into Barbados? How are we able to help? Is there someone we could help? I'll give you my name, that we could contact that would be able to help us with our efforts, getting stuff down to help with the schools, stuff to help in the hospitals, stuff to help in the clinics. We know people, but it's just there's a little barrier.
One of the things we're trying to do, because it's not only you, we've had similar complaints over the years. The difficulty of donating, the issues of duties, the issue of transport, logistics, the issues of people responding, etc. In the same way that we established a facilitation unit for returning nationals, I started the conversation inside my office and with finance and foreign affairs and Colin Jordan's ministry, which is the Ministry of the Third Sector, Civil Society. Because the four of us need to come together and create a platform. And we can have a digital platform first that focuses on philanthropy. Because what you're doing is philanthropic. Some people want to give money, some people want to give supplies, some people want to give equipment, etc. And to have a seamless passage for those who want to donate to the country or who want to help ease the burden of others, rather than this 1-1-1-1 blow. Yes, we know 1-1 blow is kill old cow, but we might need to kill some young cows too, and not just old ones. So we may need to be a little more strategic than that. And I hope that over the course of the next few months, and certainly before the end of this fiscal year, which ends in March, that we will have a platform that allows for more seamless coordination of philanthropic efforts in the diaspora, and anchored by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. As Kerry Simmons has now gone in as the minister there. And as I said, working therefore with my ministry, Ryan Strawn, Colin Jordan, and Prime Minister's office generally, that we can put this platform in place to benefit all of the efforts. So thank you. And please continue to give, because there's a lot of things that we will do at the national level, but developing countries will always have people and institutions that will fall through the cracks. Don't let us fool ourselves. So that is where, in the same way that up here has it, and up here you have a large amount of philanthropy doing what governments do back in the region, because we don't have that scale of wealth among our populations to take that percentage of the effort that philanthropy does in the US and Canada.
Just to say, Prime Minister, if I could just add to that, that we are aware of the issue with Dr. Brathwaite and with Jackie, and we have had some collaboration with the ministries back home to seek to alleviate those challenges. But as Prime Minister said, we will certainly be following up as it relates to those various ministries as well.
Hello, good evening. Thank you so much. And I would like to thank Deputy Consular General, Ms. Kendra, for the invite and allowing me to invite a number of my colleagues. Don't let the accent fool you. I am a product of Jamaica, Barbados, and a little bit of Panama. So my mother is from Jamaica, and normally the people that know me, they call me Smiley, will say, oh yeah, you know, she from Yard. Don't mind the accent. And then my father said, you better speak up. And I say, yes, I'm a Sealy.
A Sealy from Barbados.
You already know, right? So the themes that I'm hearing today about how we work, how we train, changing habit, and I'd like to add what we believe versus what we know. I went to New York University and I migrated down here. I am an auditor by trade. I have a passion for the one thing that I think through the diaspora and around the world that brings us together, which is music. Now, how audit and music work together is I find the money that's missing. So when I look to what we do as a people and how we impact lives and how we have a purpose, I don't care where you go. Soca gives life. Calypso gives life. Reggae gives life. But we don't get our just due for what it is that we put out there. Now think of the number of people.
Hard to hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
I can. Can you hear me now? The number of people who have music that is heard globally but are not collecting for that music and have a cross-functional relationship, whether it's with COT, COSCAP, JCAP, JAMS, and then your ASCAPs, your BMIs, which are your U.S. entities. They're collecting digitally, but they don't know how to collect. So when I spoke to Ms. Kendra, I said, I'll put a platform together. I already told my father, I said, I'm going back to Barbados. He said, tell me when you reach, because I'm coming, and you better learn to make conkeys. So my thing is, I'm ready to give back. And my colleague, Attorney Hill, can tell you, this is all I do. I'm passionate about it. It's about the change of the mindset. Well, you know, that person over there, they got $1,000. Well, how you know they weren't supposed to get 10,000? Are you looking at the intellectual property information that's within the United States that manages and monitors our digital platforms in which most of our artists are applying to in order to get paid? Yep. Are you recognizing the platform that if your estate isn't recognized, you're not getting your money, it sits there and it goes what we call the black box? Yep. Well, the black box is sitting there, the money is there, and I'm willing to help everyone that's in the diaspora get that money to get it back, because it's ours.
The Lord bless you. This is an area that is particularly close to my heart. I don't get the chance in this job to be able to deal with it, but let me go back. When I started practicing law, I practiced a lot of copyright law. Okay? I used to manage a band as well, so I know it only too well. And the truth is that I believe that Caribbean people have been that humanizing influence on the world through what we produce and create. And we have to be able to find ways of allowing our people to be better compensated for it. If you can come in and talk to our people in both the Ministry of Davidson Ishbill's ministry that deals with copyright and CAIPO, and Ministry of Commerce as well as Ministry of Culture, I believe that that will help not just Barbados, but a lot of Caribbean artists in terms of being able to better position themselves. You know, one of the things is that even in intellectual property, we are, in spite of being largely an English-speaking community in CARICOM, we are treated as part and parcel of Latin America, so that for IP purposes or for equipment purposes, we don't have a separate framework dealing with us. So all of these are things that we have now to fight for, and I'd like to encourage you to link with Consul General and let us link you with the others at home. This will not impact hundreds of thousands of people, but they will impact thousands of Caribbean people who themselves influence and impact millions of people globally. So thank you.
I'm excited about it.
And I'm sure when you come in, you're going to learn to make conquis too.
That part. I also,
Jamaicans don't know nothing about conquis. So you got
no, but they have turned cornmeal.
Nor kukume.
Nor kuku.
Y'all call it what? Turn cornmeal. So your father is absolutely correct.
The other thing is, I also got the commitment. I consult for PwC, and one of the partners says, tell me when you're ready to go, because I'll be there before you to help you start.
No,
so I have
wonderful.
a commitment.
No, I'm serious, dead serious about this, because you and I both know that if Machel or Lil Rick or Peter Ram or whoever say they're coming up here, or Chronics or whoever, all of a sudden they place Ram. But are they getting a corresponding rate of return for the extent to which their music is being played or used in this country?
And they have money
to be able
sitting
to,
there.
Hmm?
They have money sitting there.
That's the point. And when the money sits in escrow for long periods of time, tell them what happens to after 5-7 years.
It goes into what's called the black box, and now they've allocated a company called the MPC in order to collect that money. The MPC has the responsibility to reach out to these artists, but how do you reach out to them if they don't register properly? So it starts with the foundation of how you administer and educating on the administration. Not what we think we know, not habit, because habit is easy. So I'm all about let's go get that money and then eat some conkies.
Nope, come. Thank you, my dear. I look forward to working with you in Barbados.
On that same topic, good afternoon, everyone. I am Jelani Shaw, otherwise known as Pops. I'm a songwriter and music producer from Trinidad and Tobago. Done songs like...
Good to meet you. Bless it. Good to meet you.
Same here. Done songs like Savannah Grass, Miniature Road, Fast Wine, many hits. And this conversation that she brought up and this issue is so very real, and it's insane that, you know, just by happenstance we're here this afternoon and we're having this conversation. So I'd like to be a part of that, because I am the leader of what is called the Producers Union in Trinidad and Tobago. So the music producers and songwriters, we've come together to, you know, charge at people, organizations rather, like CUT and the government as well, who seem to have fallen asleep at the wheel when it comes to representing us on larger scales. So if we can honestly make this happen.
Absolutely.
I'm frequenting Barbados. I'm always working with Alison Hines and every single other person's in there, so I am very much excited to become part of that conversation so we can get this done.
And let me also say that the second part of the conversation, that's the business of it.
Yes.
The second part is the writing, and I'm glad that you raised that. And only 2 weeks ago I spoke to Machel, I spoke to Mikey Bennett in Jamaica. We're trying to pull together early in the new year, well, maybe not so early, but when the carnival season dies down,
yes,
a lot of our artists to be able to sit down and work out how are we going to move forward this thing called the Caribbean civilization. Okay. Because a civilization cannot thrive if it denigrates its women. Yeah. A civilization cannot thrive if it continues to promote people dying. And at the end of the day, the upholding of the civilization is not the work of governments alone. It's the work of people.
Yes.
And I maintain that artists and philosophers, teachers determine what is possible. And governments and businesses and the rest of us determine what is probable. But if you don't sit and talk and first let us know what is possible, then we ain't gonna get to probable. And we've reached that stage now. Your own Prime Minister has indicated, and as lead Prime Minister with respect to violence, security, crime in the region, that we were to have a regional convocation, not of governments, but of all of us in 2020, and COVID came. And we need now to make sure that next year we have it again, because violence is a public health disease. And this country has been able to be a little more liberal with how it treats the guns and violence. But the chickens have come home to roost here as well.
So it's only a matter of time.
They're coming home to roost in the Caribbean as well, because we don't make guns. And yesterday, Barbados, in our parliament, we did further amendments to the Firearms Act. But at the end of the day, I don't see a gun pick up and move and shoot anybody on its own. So we come back then to people, and therefore, how do we wrestle this problem down, and how do we give purpose to our people and opportunity to our people? It's not going to happen overnight, but equally we can't sit back and do nothing. And I hope, therefore, that we can have a regional approach. There are countries in the region that have a much higher murder rate than we do. But at the same time, all of us are in this together. And we've been saying so for a few years now. As I said, COVID robbed us of 2.5 years. Let's get to the business of building this Caribbean civilization and making sure that this generation does what others did, which is to make it stronger, to make it more resilient, and to allow it to be there for other people going forward. So thank you. Bless up. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Dr. Cheryl Waterman.
What's your name, sorry?
Dr. Cheryl Waterman. My concentration is children mental health.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the changes that are being made to the Child Care Board. But I also want to, and for CARICOM, because I consider myself a CARICOM baby. I grew up in Montreal High School, and I have friends throughout all the Caribbean. I have a couple of questions. We have a will, which I put before the court in Barbados. It's about 8 years now. We had COVID, but I saw your presentation a couple of weeks ago about changes to the murder and getting them to court more faster. Do you have anything coming up for such cases, to bring in cases such as wills being? My brother died, and luckily, foresight and insight last a year in September, and he gave me to be the executor, because we thought that it would have been, we would have been able to deal with it before. So are you also looking into that and making changes? Also, the returning nationals, there's a lot of us, and many of us are retiring. I had one of my colleagues who was a teacher that went to the University of the West Indies a couple of years, right before COVID, and wanted to come back to Barbados as a teacher because she does children with special needs. And she was told that she had to go back to learn. And this is a person with a master's. She's been working with children with special needs that was before your time, before you came to Prime Minister. And I'm wondering if there's any initiatives for returning nationals to give back, for people who have specialties to come back. Because I know there's a fear, and I'll talk about it, is that Barbadian Yankees, we come here to take people's jobs and so forth. And the last thing, this is for a friend of mine, she wanted to know if I could speak, is that basically with JetBlue going out, the rates to go back to Barbados are very, very high. We only have American Airlines, and we're used to having, like, I used to get a flight for about $400. Now, 7, 8, 9. Is your government having any concentration on working on those issues? Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the issue of the wills and letters of administration, probate, etc., we are actually not just related to that, but we're actually trying to do a deconstruction and a reconstruction of the processes in the registry, both from the point of view of the Vital Statistics Registry that links with the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, with the new digital identity card that we're having now, as well as the general functioning, because Obviously, we are aware too that we inherited a situation not just where cases were not moving through the court. In fact, in Christchurch Speaks on Wednesday night, we had a number of complaints about literally how we can make the justice system more effective, and that would include obviously the civil and Supreme Court registry as well. So this deconstruction and reconstruction is a work in progress, and I hope that we will be in a position to give you definitive answers as to how that will be compressed using technology to be able to do that which it can do rather than a lot of the other systems that we have. Secondly, with respect to the specialists, when I spoke just now about the philanthropic donations, the anchored part of that is the database of skills and interests. And I spoke about it in New York in September and asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because look, we've been talking about this, and the respective consulates and embassies tell us, look, we try, but people are not always willing to register. We need people to register. We need to know what skills and what interests are there. We ourselves have just brought in, and I thank the government of Guyana, this is part and parcel of the functional cooperation we have with each other. They're benefiting from a labor market and information specialist, one of the top ones who came from India. The gentleman came into Barbados 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we are now in the process of being able to see how we can map and better structure out our labor market using the technology that is there, and then also looking and seeing what is available within the single market and single economy. Because remember, if you are if you have a specialty in a particular area, and Barbados may only provide 20%, 25% of what you need to survive, you're not going to come to Barbados if you've got to rely on Barbados alone, because you're not functioning fully, or you will come in and out, in and out. But if you can also move around the other islands and other countries in the region and get the work, or you can do it from up here and come in and out, that platform can work for us. But the first thing we need to know is what is your interest and what is your specialty, and then what are the vacancies or voids that we have in our system to match the two. Technology is there. And one of the things that has frustrated me as a country is that we've taken far longer to settle these labor market information systems in an efficient and effective way. I hope that this intervention now, and I'm talking now not of anything recent, I'm talking 20-something, 30 years that we've been talking about it but not getting it right. So I really do hope that this intervention that Minister Jordan is leading with the gentleman from India, with the help of the Guyana government, that it will make a defining difference for us to be able to better manage access to skills within the diaspora. Okay? The last one related to what again? JetBlue and you know, when people don't get something for a long time and they get it back, suddenly what they try to do? They try to close the whole fast and make up the losses fast. But in fairness, you heard me say earlier, when you have a shortage of either skilled people or of an increase in fuel prices, what are you going to get? A combination of pressure, upward pressure on airline seats. We're conscious of it, and we're trying to work closely with the airline industry. Our people just came back from routes or whatever you call it in Nevada 2 weeks ago, I think. World travel market opens up in London week after next weekend or whenever again. So we're conscious of the need to increase the level of airline seats in order to be able to keep the downward pressure on flights. And we have a dedicated team working on it full time, but it is not easy, largely because of the global problems that the industry is facing. And I think you'll see those prices reflected, not just in the U.S. Caribbean market, but you're seeing them in other regions globally because of the price of oil and because of the lack of skilled labor for the industry to call upon. Okay? But don't let that stop you from coming home. It's still worth it. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Yanni Spencer. I'm Antigan, and I study chemistry and math here at FIU. And on the point of us advancing the Caribbean civilization, I find that civilizations are often advanced along with an increase in scientific research. And as a chemistry major myself, I realize that there's a habit of people in the Caribbean to overlook the importance of scientific research for the advancement of the region. And I know that people are capable. I mean, like myself, I'm from the Caribbean. I was born and raised in the Caribbean. I went through the entire Caribbean education system. And I know that I am competent and capable of contributing to the region in this way, but there's no resource available, or little resource available for me. If I say I want to pursue higher education, for example, I want to get a PhD, but every time I tell somebody that, there's always also, you're not coming back to the Caribbean because there's no resource here for me to really contribute in the way that I want to, for example, I want to do renewable energy research. And so I want to ask, do you have any plans currently in place to overlook that, to stop overlooking that habit of overlooking the importance of scientific research, and if so, in what ways?
I think almost every other conversation I have within the context of investment, I make the point that we cannot continue. In our own case in Barbados, we have over 6,000 science graduates educated at UWI in the last 5 years. And while teaching is, to me, the most noble of professions, everybody can't be a teacher. And therefore, unless we find ways of creating job opportunities in the region, those people who have science, who can't find a teaching job, will either change profession or leave the region. Both are unacceptable. And especially since, rather than finding them in that predicament, we actually need to have more people in maths and science and the arts and STEAM moving forward. I said that there'll be some interesting announcements in 2 weeks' time, which shows that we've been aggressively going after that, and I'll ask you to stay tuned for that. But suffice it to say that in addition to that, our Export Barbados also engaged Deloitte. They won the tender, and they were the ones who advised Massachusetts, Singapore, and Bahrain about how to have a policy with respect to life sciences and being able to build out the life science industries. It's not easy, but it's not impossible. And we are going to be doing a lot more of it because, as I said at the beginning this afternoon, you do not want to find yourself so totally dependent on one industry again, that what capsized us in the last few years will be repeated. So I want to encourage persons like yourself to continue. And when we say global citizens, Bajan roots, global citizens, Caribbean roots, Antiguan roots, whatever, it is because wherever you go, carry the flag close to your heart and continue to excel and bring distinction to the region, even if you're not working in the region at this point in time, because you never know where your next place may be, even if your current place is outside. Okay, so we will continue to do our part, but we want your interests still to continue strong. And if it is that you have to be in exile for a little bit, a lot of people come home from exile and bring distinction. So continue the good work. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Akil Griffith, and well, firstly, thank you so much for all the great information and your work. Originally, I'm from Barbados, but
with a name like Griffith, I wasn't doubting.
Huh? Of course. But I work in film and music. I'm a music supervisor and director, and Wonderful. I've been able to work with a lot of big brands, a lot of big artists. And since I'm so deep into it, I've seen, well, basically the work of people from the region, their work gets taken and then it blows up and then the recognition is not there. Yep. So my main question is there any mandates currently from the local or national levels and beyond the region to create those opportunities, but also focus on the recognition, because there's a lot of money being made, and where a lot of people from the region have created the foundation, but it's not coming back.
Yep. The truth is that not only now, I can tell you of a good friend of mine whose father was at the center of the Harlem Renaissance, and he was Guyanese, Jamaican, via Panama. Guyanese, Barbadian, via Panama. I can tell you of a lot of other people. You go and listen to Ken Burns's History of Jazz, and you see the references to Caribbean people playing a critical role in the development of jazz in the early part of the 20th century. We have, like the young lady with science from Antigua just now, seen our people come out, and the assimilation takes place, but the recognition doesn't come back to us, nor does where's Masili? The money. You understand? And one of the things that, when I said that next year we want to start meeting, and while we want to deal with violence as a public health disease first, the truth is that there's a lot more that we need to speak about with our artists in the Caribbean civilization. But when we finish talking about the philosophy of who we are and what we want to be, we need to also talk about the business of what we're doing on a daily basis and how best we can anchor a lot more of it in the region rather than being anchored in North America and Europe, where they get the benefit of the taxation, they get the benefit of the royalties, they get the benefit of dividends, they get the benefit of the foreign currency, they get the benefit of everything, but it is our experiences, our stories, our passion, our creativity that's helping to make it. And we've got to find a way. Barbados is trying to do some serious work on the film industry now. Marietta. We have some people working with us and putting together the whole framework. And I hope that that will spawn greater interest in the music industry, etc. I keep making the point that when I leave this job, I'm going to make movies and music. So I hope, Mr. Griffith, I'll see you in that pasture. But before then, we will try to be able to create an environment where a lot more can be done from within the Caribbean, rather than having Caribbean people have to come here to be able to make a living in these critical areas. Okay, making sense?
Yes.
And can I invite you as well, because how often do you go home? Or you haven't been recently?
Not recently.
Well, I'd like.
But
So the fact that you're here tells me that this is the bridge to bring you home. You understand?
Well, my dad was a diplomat, so I know what's going on a lot.
Yeah, but I meant in terms of being able to help build in this particular area. So once again, that's why people like you, registering, us knowing what your skills are, us knowing what your interest is, immediately allows us to be able to reach out, and the National Cultural Foundation can say, let me bring together all the people who are working in the creative industries for a reunion at home to see what is possible and what are the networking opportunities. Let me bring together all the people who are working in public health and nursing and medicine, or medical research, like my good friend Juliette Daniel in Canada. Let me bring together all the people working in other disciplines. And that is what is going to make the difference, because then we have not just capacity, but we then are able to create opportunity to get results.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Amen.
Benjamin. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Pat Redman. I am a former employee of the Barbados government. I work with the Ministry of Trade under Mr. St. John, and I also worked in Canada in the Alberta Treasury and with Orlando and Orange County in this area. My question today is about LIAT. I know it's not a warm and fuzzy topic. I'm sure most of us here have heard of the how LIAT went on there. My concern and my question, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but I don't quite understand what has happened. I have relatives that are pilots, 2 in one family, who have suffered enormously, and they have given me stories of others who have really suffered. I know we think of pilots as people who earn a lot of money. Not so with Liat necessarily. These are folks that were just struggling. What concerns us is that they have lost they have not only lost wages that were due to them, they've lost different benefits, they've lost their pensions, they've lost all the things that people take for granted, that if you are laid off or let go for whatever reason, some kind of help that you have planned for is coming your way. I have personally had to seriously financially help members of our family who are still struggling to get back on their feet. And I know people think, oh, they're missing, the pilots are shortage. There's a shortage of pilots across the world right now. Yes, there is, but it's not the kind of profession that you can just get up one morning, pick up your family, take your kids out of school.
You have to retrain.
Take them. You can't just take them to the U.S. or to Europe or somewhere, because you have your kids to consider, your wife to consider, your whole livelihood, your whole life changes. So my question is, I was interested in hearing that Antigua is starting an airline. I found that very interesting. But I want to know if there's any kind of help, if there's some ongoing process which will help these pilots to be able to recover at least some of the funds that are owed to them, to give them some kind of new start and help them to get on their feet in the near future.
Part of the difficulty, thank you for your question and thank you for your concern. Part of the difficulty is that Liat 1974 Limited is effectively bankrupt. We in Barbados have tried to deal with all of the ones who worked in Barbados, and we've dealt with them through the National Insurance Scheme and the Severance Payments Fund. But as you know, that was not necessarily the majority of persons. I do not and would not answer in a vacuum because Liat is under receivership. I've not seen or had a report recently, not that one isn't there, I haven't seen it. And I do know that the governments are awaiting a study or two to be done, but we have made the case that there has to be some conversation at some point. As to what that conversation will lead to, I can't prejudice it because I genuinely don't know. But we do know that technically, even though the company may be insolvent, the question is, can there be some level of compassionate payments to be made? Will those compassionate payments be equal to or less than severance, given that the company is bankrupt and given that the region still has to solve its interregional travel problems? So suffice it to say that I think that this is one of the burning issues for all of us in the Eastern Caribbean and Southern Caribbean. But we are certainly not in a position to know exactly what the future is going to look like. Will the future, for example, have a revamped Liat or a revamped airline by Liat or other shareholders or private shareholders? The study will soon be available. I say that because whatever the future holds means that they're going to need staff there too. As it relates to the past and severance and compassionate payments, that has to be the subject of what both the receiver and the member state governments have done. We felt in Barbados that we would take care of those working in Barbados because we understood the difficulty, particularly during COVID. We didn't, and pending their receipt of the NIS, it was in no means a salary, but it was just a bridging payment so that people could cope and live. So I understand that fully. But the severance is critical. We accept the severance for those in Barbados. Those wider, the discussion has to come to take place. Okay? Suffice it to say, though, I think that once we have a better sense of when the studies will be available too, I suspect that you'll find more focus on the conversation. Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Elisa Cox-West. I am actually a member of the Barbados Association of Jacksonville. You talked a lot about global citizens with Bajan roots, and I see lots of successful Bajans, Bajan Americans, people of Barbadian descent. So I know that under the leadership of Ambassador Noel Lynch and the former Minister of Education, Santia Bradshaw, they put together or established the Diaspora Education Committee. And I'm wondering, how can we, with all of the skills and the talents and the success that's in this room right now, how can we strengthen diasporic mentorship and create a talent pipeline to ensure Barbadian youth are exposed to a plethora of career paths and are truly prepared to be not only global citizens, but globally successful citizens?
All of what we're doing is intended to help create that platform. Kofi Annan said when he opened UN House that Barbados punches above its weight. And I genuinely believe that we have, for the most part, done so. But there are some things that we need to do a little better and to get correct, because the environment within which we function does not remain static. And perhaps one of the things that we have to do is to manage change better and to understand that for transformation we need scale. I don't have a difficulty having, or I don't have a problem having difficult conversations, because we're one family. And there's not a single family I know that does not have to have a difficult conversation at some point. We ain't exactly doing what we're supposed to do. We ain't clean up the backyard how it should clean up. We ain't plant when we were supposed to plant. You left the dishes in the sink when I tell you don't leave the dishes in the sink. You understand? So if we can have those, or I tell you don't go out and come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. You understand? You got to go to church in the morning. You got to do this, X, Y, Z. Or while you're spending all your money, you need to put down some and save some for a rainy day. These are the conversations that we have in our lives day to day. Similarly, we need to have these difficult conversations as a country and as a region. This Caribbean civilization, 95% of the time, when we enter global conversations, we are the humanizing element, because we know what it is to have been exploited and to be suffering for centuries. But we can't only rest upon that. The question is, how do we now make ourselves earn the respect daily and earn the dollars daily that will make us masters of our own fate, captains of our own destiny. And that is where I think that we are not necessarily moving as quickly and as adept, and we've not become as adept at doing it as we should. When I said that we were underpopulated as a region for the most part, with the exception of probably Haiti, I meant it. And therefore, we can't get the scale of growth that will make the difference to transforming our societies and our lives as quickly. Guyana is the size of the United Kingdom. It has 800,000 people. The United Kingdom has 65, 66 million people. Suriname is larger than the Netherlands. The Netherlands has 17 million people. Suriname has 580,000 people. Can you imagine this entire Caribbean region, from Belize in Central America, that has the same land size as Israel, but Belize has 400,000 people and Israel 8 million people? Can you begin to understand that if this region ever got its act together in terms of population, economic development, social equity, political reach, what a powerhouse we would be with the humanizing element that we bring to global civilization? But how do we do that? It's not a concept in the atmosphere. It comes by 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. And that's why Mahatma Gandhi said that the change begins with us. If we want to see change in the world, what are you, each of us, prepared to do each and every day? Are you prepared to push past the pain? Because anything that grows is going to have what? Growing pains. But immediately, many of us feel that the culture of contentment that we have means that we sit back cool and just wait and relax. Well, in a polycrisis world, the pain is going to come whether we sit back or get up. So you could as well get up and fight it and build. And that's the message that we've been trying to bring. And similarly, partner with those who are like-minded. The genius of Errol Barrow's statement in 1966 when he addressed the United Nations that we shall be friends of all and satellites of none is applied mainly as a national foreign policy statement. But I want to suggest to you, as I will to the people of Barbados as we celebrate the first anniversary of our republic, that the genius of that statement goes beyond the country. It goes to the individual. And that in small states, we have to learn to be able to work together without necessarily having to agree on everything. That we can disagree without being disagreeable. That we can do things in common pursuit with purpose without believing that we have to agree on every single item. And these are the hard decisions and difficult decisions that if we're going to work the 8 hours and give me more, don't give me less. If we're going to do things, give extra and leave something sweet in people's mouths. You understand? If the napkin dropped on the table and you're a waiter, look and see, don't wait for somebody to ask for the napkin to be changed. If you're a lawyer, don't sit down for the people who work because you just don't feel like getting to them in a hurry. If you're a doctor, if you're a nurse, regardless of whoever you are, what does it mean for us to go the extra yard and to push past the pain? I actually taken a few days off from today. And technically, I am off until Wednesday next week. But where am I now? I'm talking with you. Because I felt that even though I'm taking time off, if I could meet with you here, because of the tightness of the rest of my calendar, it can add value to what I'm doing and value to what we can do together with South Florida. So I give this example to make the point. A smile don't cost us nothing. Extra work don't cost us nothing. Civility don't cost us nothing. Thank you, please. All the things that we were taught before. And working together to make many hands make light work. Treating other people as we expect to be treated. These are just too basic. And I don't feel. I ask myself, why is it that we've reached the point where the message that I'm bringing is really the message that is brought to children and to young nations and to young institutions? Is it because we are still young as independent entities and sometimes have to be reminded of the basics? Is it that we've overlooked the basics and believe that the next step is about up here, but don't understand that if we don't get the foundation right, if we don't manage the day-to-day things right, we can't have the large transformative visions. So I'm saying all of these things because I feel that these are the conversations that we have to have. And we're not going to get everybody all at once, but I do pray that those of you in here will do your part, and those who listen on the internet will do their part. And in the month of November, when we get ready to celebrate independence of the Republic, in fact, Barbados as a nation, Barbadians as a people, that we reflect. Because if you look in a mirror and only see the good, then you don't realize that you're hurting yourself in the long run. How can we be better each and every day? And how can we at the same time allow other people to sleep easier each night? And these are not just words. This is what I genuinely believe will help make a difference to what we can achieve as a people and individually.
I wanted to follow up on that in regards to each of us doing our part, right? With so many different skills and skill sets and various industries. How are we going to tangibly create that talent pipeline and that level of mentorship so that Barbadian youth are exposed to the various different career paths that are truly available to them, and that way they can bring that back to enhance Barbados. For example, I'm a project manager for one of the world's largest financial institutions. there are project management courses, but when I went into, I do a lot of philanthropic work with St. Ambrose Primary School. The students there have no clue what a project manager does. And a project manager in finance looks different from someone who may be in engineering or in construction, in the, sciences, etc. So how can we better sort of fortify that pipeline to ensure that they're exposed to the talent that's sitting here, so that not only are they exposed to it, they're intrigued by it, and then we can support them and mentor them as they explore those various fields.
Look, the first thing is to knowing that it's there. If you don't know that the talent is there, you can't use it. And that's why I talked about the digital philanthropic platform just now. That's not just looking at goods, but also looking at skills and interests. The second thing is to get people to want to register. So that some people here may know about it, but they just haven't gotten around to register. You need to register. If not, we won't know about it. The third thing is to get an idea from people. How do you see yourself giving? Is it monetary? Is it hours? Is it 20 hours a year? Is it 50 hours a year? Is it 100 hours? Just like, you see how Obama started that movement? With everybody just literally being able to use a grassroots movement and people committing to what they can. That is what we need to do. And that is why I am adamant this time around that we have to get it right, because the technology is there. I ain't no IT specialist, but I could use a Google Sheet that would link all the embassies and consulates together in one thing. Not true? That's the first thing. So I just feel that we've been talking about it too long. And that's why I've brought together, I've said to Colin Jordan, and I think he's working with one or two people in terms of the philanthropic coordination, have Ministry of Finance, because I don't want to hear that customs or finance in waive the taxes, or customs in processing the things through. And in some instances where they need licenses, that we're in a position to get licenses cleared for people. And similarly, Foreign Affairs, because at the end of the day, we successfully created a facilitation unit for returning nationals. What we recognize this week, and it was a valid point made at Christchurch Speaks, is that perhaps focuses more on older people who are coming to retire and not sufficiently on people who are coming in the prime of their lives still, and who can continue to work and therefore may need help with placement. So we need to make sure that it is then linked to the same labor market information system that I just talked about. I ain't fooling you. If we can do that in the next year or two, then we would have achieved what Barbados could not achieve for 56 years as an independent nation. And immediately it allows us then to leverage not just 300,000 people on the rock, but probably another 3 times that outside. And that is what technology allows for us to do. You're the project manager, no, not me. So you know. No, but it's true, not true?
It's true.
Huh? But it just means, as I keep saying, somebody must come to work every day to make it happen. And that is what I'm trying to put in place now. Because if not, if it is being done by somebody who has 5 other things to do, gone through, slipped through the cracks. So we are committed, especially in the post-COVID environment now. We need all hands on deck. We may not always find the right place in the right position for somebody, but if we're not trying, we don't know. We need all hands on deck. Thank you.
It's now 6:31 p.m. I'm going to allow 2 more questions before we... And I'm seeing 3 people.
We got 3. We're done with the 3.
I'm seeing 3 people.
We're done with the 3. We're done. We're allowed 3.
So we're seeing 3 people. So...
Please. Yes, ma'am.
Blessed love and light. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Honorable. My name is Ikaya Isis. I am from Trinidad and Tobago. I reside here in the U.S. I am the face of the queer clothing. I'm here with my elder, Homer Bear, founder of Queer Clothing, the official reggae brand. We love to say since life, but chronologically since 1987. Queer Clothing is a brand that strives to keep our culture rich, bridging the gap with Africans in the continent and on the continent and in the diaspora, with historical, political statements and positive vibration. I said Africans, but queer clothing is a brand for everyone. I'm here not with a question, but a request. And this is not issues that is just in Barbados, it's all over. You have demonstrated strength and power of a woman. Thank you. I know you're a woman that desires betterment for your country. I believe that there should be opportunities for all groups in the island. On behalf of the Rastafarians in Barbados who do not fit social norms, I'm kindly asking that you consider shining some light on this spiritual group. Please consider things such as jobs with benefits, religious exemptions, land to farm, and not profiling Rastas as drug dealers. I believe that you can implement change that would benefit Rastas and cause them to gain respect as a peculiar people in the island. I believe that you can help remove the stigmas that follows Rastafari. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And without saying more, we have worked very closely with the community and will continue to do so, both in terms of land, in terms of working with them in town, Temple Yard where they are. Suffice it to say that we're not always perfect, but I know that my government has and will continue to work very closely with the community, not just in Barbados, but regionally. Okay? Thank you.
Good evening, Prime Minister Motley. Now, my question to you, crime and violence in Barbados is a big issue right now. It's a very big issue in Barbados right now. And I live in the U.S., but it's affected me in that on August the 14th, I lost my nephew to gun violence. And his brother, I lost him on October the 21st, last Friday night, Friday before last. Now, I'm going to be heading to Barbados to bury my nephew in a couple of days. Now, I keep very close contact to what's happening in Barbados. I watch the news, I follow everything that's going on. I see police in Barbados arrest individuals for gun crimes. They're placed in jail, they go before the courts, they get bail. These same individuals come back to the streets, commit similar crimes, go back to the court and get bail again. Who sets the policy that determines how these individuals get bail to come back on the street to commit these crimes over and over? That's my question, that's one.
Regrettably, there's something called a separate, not regrettably for that, regrettably that you've lost two nephews, and I am aware of this situation. Bail is entirely within the province of the judges. Members of the executive, prime minister, ministers, permanent secretaries, public officers, none of us have any say in that at all. With respect to the legislation, we passed the legislation. I, as you may know, used to practice a lot of criminal law in my early days. And in my day, you couldn't get bail for murder at all. But the evolving human rights situation in the world changed. And in the same way that the courts ruled that you can't hang somebody, or not that you can't, that to hang somebody after 5 years on death row is cruel and unusual punishment. The courts also felt that to hold a man without his being able to get a bail, get access to bail, or to do it in a way where Parliament denies the judge the right to be able to consider whether bail is an option, is also equally disproportionate and in breach of constitutional rights. My government can't go beyond that or behind that. But what we did instead was that we said, look, we've inherited a backlog of cases. In fact, even as I speak to you today, 80% of the murder cases that are before the courts in Barbados are for murders committed before May 2018. And almost 80% of the gun cases are for gun crimes or possession of guns before May 2018. Because of that, the first thing we did was to create three additional positions. One was permanent, two were temporary thing, but we moved from 2 to 5 judges in the criminal courts. For all the years, Barbados only had 2 criminal judges. We moved it to 5. Boom, COVID happened. During COVID, we could not have jury trials, which meant that effectively for more than 2 years, you could not get any serious progress for the most part of those 2 years, or a little more than that, with respect to criminal cases. Because of that, I announced a week ago that we will add another 3 criminal courts. Why? Because you've heard me say over and over, many hands make light work, which means 3 judges, additional prosecutors, etc. In addition to that, we've met with the police and we've said we will give you additional resources for the preparation of the caseload. Because the truth is that we do have more people getting into gun violence than previously. There may be other crimes that may be flat. The murder cases are, and let me be very clear, every murder is wrong. But the murder cases and the incidence of murder may be less than other Caribbean countries, but it is too high for us. And there's a song that I played last week for conference, an Ernie Smith song, We the People. Those who don't know it, go and listen to it again. Because that was written 50 years ago in Jamaica. We know where we can go if we do not work as a people to wrestle this down. And I keep making the point that no amount of belief that this is government problem or police problem or nothing so to solve it, because it is all of us. When you have, as we had in the last decade, young people leave school and could find no work for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, where do you think they go when the day come? They're mixing with people. And all of a sudden, not only that, do you think that in their 30s, when jobs come, that all of a sudden people can get a culture to go sleep early and wake up early and not fret and do everything every day? They're not going to. So that there's a whole conversation that has to take place within family, every individual family in Barbados, where people have to begin to say, where you get that from? Where I get the money to buy that? Who give it to you? And some basic old-time values. You understand? And yes, I would like more parents to commit to sending their children to Sunday school. You understand? Because all of us know that even if you don't end up staying in church all along, you learn the moral compass. You learn the moral compass, both in school and in Sunday school. Then we need to have more adults mentoring young kids between the ages of 8 and 16 in particular. You know, in days when cricket was the dominant sport, all kinds of people would join cricket clubs. And I keep making the point that fellas who didn't have no influence of a father at home, but was going to this cricket club every day, developed relationships with men in the club, and that you saw from the richest to the poorest, from the oldest to the youngest, all involved in cricket clubs. And we all know who went to Wanderers and who went to Spartan and who went to Empire and who, you understand what I'm saying? But irrespective of that, they were there. And what they did, and just bear with me a second, a fella at 15 or 16 go and get a girl pregnant. Head game out, don't know what to do, nobody home at him, only grandmother and the mother home at him. No older brother, all the rest of the siblings and sisters, who you can talk to? in the cricket club with the mentorship, he could immediately talk to the man who playing and practicing with him all the time. Say, man, I got a problem, what to do? And you immediately give him context and perspective and skills to handle it and management. What I'm worried about is that the opportunities for intergenerational communication, support, and mentoring, interclass, intergenerational, all of these things are missing in ways because we've become so consumed in what we must achieve at the individual level that we've forgotten the principles of Ubuntu. I am because we are. You cannot survive in a small state unless the collective is made stronger. And my heart bleeds for you, my brother. I can't imagine the pain of having to lose 2 nephews in 1 year. But I am saying to our people, and you know, those who want to be partisan can dismiss it. I think I'm making a difference. Or the rest of us can realize that this is our moment in time to create history. And that's why I said last Saturday as I addressed our annual conference, that we have to come together and we have to create and do better. And that's why I've put Corey Lane. Anybody who knows Corey has over 24 years experience in working with troubled young people. Corey had no big set of people supporting him. Up at Fun Ranch, he would go up there, all kinds of people would send their kids there. He would try and work with them and make a hand of them. But equally as important, from where he was working in people empowerment and the welfare agencies, he knows what's happening there. He will work with culture, he will work with housing, we will work with education. One of the things we're trying to do, let's get real. All them houses that were up in the Pine and a lot of the houses in Farm and elsewhere that were built in the 50s and 60s, Thorpes, etc., were built for a single generation with 2 or 3 kids. 60, 70 years later, what do we have? 3 and 4 generations living in a house that built for 2 at most. So that is why the government is so adamant that the silent revolution in housing must happen. And that's why I went to see what I went to see before coming here today, because we're going to look for as many opportunities to tackle the problem as we can, because I also make the point that when a house is hot and overcrowded, where do people go? They go out the house, and they go and lie under a tree or on a block or somewhere. And then who then are helping them with the rites of passage to life? Now I can talk all evening on this because I know it, I feel it, this consumes me more than most things. And that is why I know that the only way we're going to do it is by people, community by community, family by family, deciding, come inside, let me talk to you. And in some instances, people like yourselves outside may have to help those at home if there's not a strong focal person in the family to be able to say, look, let me sit down and reason, because this ain't happening. This ain't going. I also have something called Wise Up that we're starting. In fact, it started already with Kirk Humphrey and same Corey Lane. And I told the press, I don't want the press there, because we're going into communities and just reasoning with people. And they're going to do it most weeks of the year, once a week, because these are the kinds of conversations that are going to make a difference. You ever see a dead man walk? No. You would love your nephews to be back alive. I keep making the point, I would love my brother to be back alive, though he died from different circumstances. Dead people don't walk. So the first thing we have to do is to get people to understand that death is finite. And this nonsense about believing that you can kill somebody in a video game, go and have lunch and come back and start killing again. That's video games. That's cartoons. That is not real life. And these are the conversations that the government alone cannot carry. The police alone cannot carry. No one country in the Caribbean can carry. And just as we are having a diabetes epidemic, we have a problem with violence as a public health disease, and we have to come together to wrestle it down.
You brought up the next topic that I wanted to ask about. Now, I grew up as a member of Police Boys Club in Bay Street. And we had a number of programs there when I was growing up. We had a some great policemen around like Sergeant Robinson, Parker Phillips, and most recently, Jeffrey Hubble. Now, Mr. Hubble being one of the last people who ran this program, along with Robin Garns, they had programs there for all the youth in the area, football, basketball. Now, that was community policing. I have asked many persons why did those type of programs were not expanded across Barbados, because I saw what Hubble did with those kids, how he talked to them when they didn't have a father to talk to them, how he brought guys who were going on the wrong road onto the right road.
You're hitting the nail on the head.
I want to know, are we going to go back and set those type of things in place
last
to help the
Saturday,
youth for Barbados?
We actually expanded already, but last Saturday I announced a further expansion after discussions with the commissioner during the week. The reality is that they have been working, as we have been with the Prince's Trust, because they have a structured program, and we've seen the difference it has made in the lives of many. And I think that the police will tell you that the numbers that are really causing the problems are not in a big set. They're not thousands, okay? But having said that, they're enough. And because a gun is so lethal a weapon, and an automatic gun is even more lethal, they have a disproportionate impact on public safety. We are expanding. I think they had 20, I think he told me. Within 20 is 10, but then when you add the money being spent from the Prince's Trust, it's gone wide. We're expanding, almost doubling that, to ensure that we can have the kind of community policing and the building of relationships. I've seen the difference in town with Sergeant Mohan and what he's done in town, uptown, in the Orleans and Emerton Lane and Chapman Lane, working with programs there, and I believe in it. So I hope that they can work more aggressively. But we want to go further. There's a one family program that we want to have to be able to rid the country of poverty as well. And it's not that poverty is linked with crime, but poverty is linked with lack of opportunity, which then creates, regrettably, opportunity for others to do foolishness. And when I say that the whole country has to fight it, I literally mean it. Because if 1 out of every 5 are below the poverty line, what does that mean? That 4 out of 5 are above. And if we can therefore have people come together, to work together, to help families, matching families with families, then instead of you just putting in a piece of change, when you actually go to the house and you mix with the family and say, oh, you need X, Y, Z. Oh, I got some of that. Or my aunt coming down from New York next weekend until she bring bum, 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 bum. And you create a different relationship. And that's why I say when you go back to the community groups, you talked about the Police Boys Club, but go back to all the cultural groups. Look, go back to Trent Summer Day Camp. Go back to the sporting groups. Go back to all of the things that we're talking about. And that lack of building of social capital is hurting us across the region. Thank you, my brother. And our prayers are with you and your family at this difficult time. Yes, sir.
Yeah, greetings, Prime Minister, Consul General. My name is Homer Bear. I'm the CEO of a company, Kuya. I don't know if you're familiar with the brand. The brand is from 1987. We go by Established Since Life. I basically produce shirts for all the stars, from Bob Marley, Peter Tosh, to Marshall Montana, the soca artist. I'm responsible for his brand. What I need to find out from you is, how would I invest in Barbados to bring my brand to Barbados, 1, 2, and I think I could be able to help you with the manufacturing sector, because as far as manufacturing, I've been doing this from 1987.
Let me have the CG link you up with Invest Barbados. I think when I walked in here, I saw a video going on with it earlier this evening. And that's their role, to see how we can do it. And let me also encourage you in believing, because one of the difficulties is that because Barbados is a small market, people felt that you could only do for Barbados alone. But we want to make Barbados an entrepot, just as it was in the past. It's just that it was an entrepot for nefarious and illegal purposes called slavery.
Right.
But we want to make it an entrepot for noble purposes,
Right.
whether it is agro-processing, manufacturing, renewable energy, etc. And because of our geography where we are and our distance to Africa, to North America, South America, Central America, we believe that geography matters and that we can work to be able to have a lot more done there, and then for us also to use it as a logistics hub for others who are doing elsewhere in the region. So I'd love you to have the meeting with them, and for Rudy to be able to make sure that you meet with the Invest Barbados people and let's see what's possible.
Yeah.
Kuya, you said?
Kuya.
Yeah.
Look here, Jamaican
Yeah,
word, patwa.
I know.
And,
Kuya.
yeah, see?
Kuya.
And we keep on going, and congratulations because on being a republic. When I spoke to our Prime Minister years ago, 15 years ago, and I told them, let's go Republic. They didn't do it. I designed a shirt, Kuya Republic, and 15 years is still one of the top selling shirts under the Kuya brand.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
So congratulations again.
No, thank you, and let us do it together. Look, what wasn't achieved then can be now, and we're going to keep trying. And I genuinely believe that none of us in this region can do it alone, and that if we come together, complementing each other, that's when the real show can start.
Right.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
Take care. So, I really have to move soon.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I just would like to end it. I would like to end it with these words. My name is Marjorie Davison. I'm a retired nurse. I've been living in the United States a long time, but I'm a proud Barbadian. And I would like to tell you, you have brought Barbados up. Regardless of how we do in tourism, what you have done in the last 2 years, you have gained admiration internationally. And you have Christian and a Pearl having a conversation with you, trying to tell you up, but she doesn't know that Barbadians are smart and they can't outsmart you in any argument. And that's what she discovered.
Thank you.
And all those others in Britain and all those people admire you, and that is why you are on the front of Time magazine. And that is why I would like to end. We are having a difficult time. Yes, we are a small island, but as you said, we are resilient. And we have to think individually how to make money. We cannot just rely on America and Britain. Look what's happening to America right now. Look what's happening to Britain and who is their prime minister. We don't know the future, all right? So we have to think individually, and the emphasis is on the new generation and those young people that can't get jobs, and to let them know that because they didn't get into Harrison College or Lodge, that they are not inferior, and that they can go and learn different trades, and they can become richer than those who have all those top jobs, and that they must have hope, so they won't be out there stealing and robbing and giving up. Let them know that because they didn't go to one of those top schools, that they're not inferior. And all those little children who didn't pass for those schools should not leave feeling inferior. Barbadians have to be strong. I've been overseas a long time. I come from a poor family. My father tried his best with me, and I thank him. And when you have an opportunity, as long as you have good brains and eat flying fish, every day you must learn.
Yep.
So I just would like to thank you for what you have done for Barbados in the world.
Thank you.
You very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me say that, let me thank you on behalf of Barbadians, because we could not have done, and I could not have done any of this without a population that gets it. And Barbadians have stepped up to the plate for the most part. As I said, we're not perfect, but what we've been able to do to save the dollar, what we've been able to do to come through COVID, what we've been able to do to be rebuilding after the first hurricane in 66 years and the first bad ashfall in 100 years has been nothing short of phenomenal. And I also want to thank my team, because I can't carry a lot of these battles if I don't have a team that is also helping to carry the weight. So believe you me, this is not about me alone, but it is about the team and the country. And that's why I feel that as difficult as it is in the world, and God knows that it will continue to be for some time, that we probably actually will do better than most in times of difficulty than in good times, because we have that spirit of resilience, and we know what it is to apply our hearts to wisdom and to come together as one to save each other on a very small rock. And that is where we are today. I thank you for coming out this evening. I thank you for being engaged. Whether it is here, it was in Georgetown University a few weeks ago, wherever I go, we're trying to meet with as many people because we know that we need more people on board in order to transform, because this is only with scale that we're going to get transformation. So thank you, God bless you all, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Seeing you in Barbados.
Thank you. Thank you, Prime Minister. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I want to, before we close, acknowledge the presence of our former Consul General, Ben Martinez, acknowledge the presence as well of my consulate colleagues that are here, and Prime Minister just asked Elisa Cox-West to give the vote of thanks very briefly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can use this one.
You go ahead.
Good evening again. My name is Elisa Cox-West. I'm a member of the Barbados Association of Jacksonville and Neighbors. How awesome was tonight? Wasn't that just fantastic? And I think it definitely speaks to your humility, Prime Minister, that you are so willing to come and have conversations with us. It definitely speaks to your character and your humility, and we thank you. Honorable Mia Moore Motley, Prime Minister of Barbados, Consul General, Mr. Rudy Grant, our most valuable invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to offer thanks on this occasion. On behalf of the Consulate General of Barbados at Miami and all gathered here, we wish to extend a warm thank you to Prime Minister Motley for taking the time out of her busy, and we know she is busy, right? Turn on CNN, BBC, you will know. She is busy. Her busy schedule to speak with us today. We are all inspired by your great work. It was truly appreciated for you to be here. We are also happy to welcome the Consul Generals from other Caribbean countries who are here with us this evening. We thank you. I wish to also thank Ms. Vanessa Vasquez and the entire FIU team for accommodating us on this lovely campus and the facilitation in making this event a reality. Thanks to the members of Barbadian diaspora organizations for your continued support and attendance. If you're here from a Barbados organization, raise your hand. Lovely. Thank you for being here. Thanks also to the volunteers of the Caribbean Students Association of FIU for assisting us today. We also thank the other members of the Caribbean Students Association from Miami-Dade College and Rising Black Scholars, as well as University of Miami for joining us. Special thanks to all staff of the consulate for your support. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to express my heartfelt thanks to all of you in attendance. Remember to visit Barbados, invest in Barbados, and of course, travel safely. Thank you.